Okay, in today's video, I'm actually going to show you what I think is a pretty effective way to start learning a new opening. Um, and this came about because I made some changes in my opening repertoire recently and started using this process and kind of refined it over the last few months. And um, it's been good. And first, before we get right into it, I just wanted to discuss what I think is maybe a mistake people make when they're learning new openings. Again, this is maybe more towards beginners and intermediate players. If you are a master, you're probably better at preparing openings than I am. But the thing is that most of mistakes under master level are not because of lack of opening preparation, or at least a large percentage of contributing to, I guess, mistakes and losses are not because of lack of preparation. But as we want to grow in our opening knowledge so that we understand the typical strategies, the typical plans in our openings. So we do want to have maybe a starting point with that. So that's kind of the background behind us. And why don't I get right into it? I'm actually building my repertoire with black against the King's Gambit. So I'm just going to show you quickly the phases that I go through, and then what happens is we build on it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I like using Lichess's Opening Explorer. Okay. Now this is what I'm going to do. I'm actually using a book from Forward Chess as my resource, and this is you can, of course, use a Chessable course, and it's a little different if you want to build it from scratch. And maybe I'll make another video on that because a couple of areas of my opening repertoire I'm building without any book resource. So, but this one is if you have a book or you have a course on Chessable, and I'm going to use this and I'm going to show you how to do it here. So I'm in the Opening Explorer. And the first thing I'm going to do here is actually I'm going to go to this gear. And what you can do is you can set where the database is accessing the games from. And it's very important to, well, I think it's very important to kind of match it with your rating level. And so my classical rating is around 2100. So I'm going to click the 2000 and the 2200 here. So this is pulling games from Lichess, and I picked Rapid and Classical. I think Blitz and Bullet are pretty not useful for this task. But Rapid and Classical, I mean, if I wanted to get a little more, you know, I would click just the Classical, but I want to get a large pool of games within this rating range so that I can see what people within my rating range are, how they're responding. Okay, so I'm going to click All Set. And here I know the King's Gambit starts with E4, E5, and then F4. So I'm going to go look in my reference, and here I'm going to go ahead and let's see here. I'm going to click here. I'm in Forward Chess, a very good web app, which I use. I also use the phone app. I know I've done a review on Forward Chess before, but I can't recommend them enough. And I'm going to go find my opening. So I'll go to the contents, and with the King's Gambit, he actually this particular book by Victor Bologan actually has several lines, but I'm going to be if I can find it. Oh, I'm going to be playing D5, which is the could known by a few things, but I'm going to click here. The Falkbeer Counter Gambit, Chapter 14, I think is the one that I'm looking for here. And basically, I'm going to, in Lichess, I'm going to go ahead and play this move D5, which is in my repertoire. Now, there's a few lines here, so I'm going to have to, I'm doing this on the fly here. So we might have to jump from chapter to chapter. Um, So we can see here, I've entered D5, and now we can see, and this is the whole point here, is that we can see a majority of the responses here are E takes D5. The reason why you want to use the database like on Lichess is because the players at your level may not be playing the absolute main line, or may not be playing the moves that the masters play. So just in this opening phase of studying, you don't want to necessarily study like the super mainline responses that Magnus Carlsen and Caruana play, because you'll never see those in your games. So you can see the people at my rating level, most of them play E takes D5. So I'm going to put that in, E takes D5, and then I'm going to flip back here to my reference book for chess, and we're going to see here after I'm going to skip through here a little bit. Normally I would read these, but since we're making a video here, after E takes D5, I'm going to flip the board to black's perspective. Then here there's a few moves after E takes D5. I'm going to look here at the main move in our repertoire, which is E takes D4. So I'm going to go back, and I know it seems like kind of a tedious process, but partly it's because I'm slowing down to explain it. But once you get the swing of things, it'll be faster here. And here, the most popular move by far here, I'm not sure if you can see these numbers, 13,000 games versus 651 for number 2 here, is knight to F3. Now, eventually, let's go back here. Eventually, you're going to want to look at these other responses. But just for now, you really want to just get what I call the skeleton, which is the first few moves here. Okay, then again, we jump back. And again, I'll just do this particular line just to show you how it's done. And then we'll go on to the next phase here. So after this, let's see, after E takes D4, now we have a bunch of responses. We saw that knight to F3 was the most popular response by my opponent. So that's letter C here. Now, one thing to note here, this is actually another chapter. Let me just see where this goes here. I'm going to find this. And here we have knight to F3, and black's response is knight to F6. So again, we just go back and we update our study on Lichess. To knight to F6. And then here again we see the numbers are getting a little closer here. We have C4 as the top response, bishop to C4 is the second response, and now they're all within like 1,000 or 1,500 games of each other. And then D4, actually a bunch of responses all have a couple thousand games. What I'm going to suggest is that you just maybe take the first couple, and here we're just going to look at the first one. Just to show you the process, because I want to get to the next part of the process. So bishop to C4, or I'm sorry, C4 is played. And again, we're just going to jump back. I'll try to move a little quicker this time. And we can see here in the book that it is also listed here under section C4. So I'm going to go to it. And then we see here, after C4, that we have C6. By the way, we see some of the other lines. If we look here in the chapter listings, after knight to F6, bishop to C4 and bishop to B5 check have their own chapters. And so if we ever face those lines, we'll want to look at those chapters. But let's keep going along this line here. And a good question at this point is, how far do we need to go? And it really depends, but I will show you here. We'll go right to the end of where I think we should stop with this line. After C6, now the top choice here is D takes C6. Now, if I were to do this a little more thoroughly, I would also look at D4, because now we're seeing where it's getting a little closer here. So D takes C6, we go back to our reference, and then we see what our resource suggests here. And let's find the options. It looks like, well, so this one is interesting. even though d takes c6 is the most popular option, it is not the main line. And this is what I was talking about, is that many of your opponents are not going to necessarily play the main line. In fact, d takes c6 is looked at as a mistake here. So d takes c6, and again, we're going to go back and look at what white's response is, which is knight takes c6. Ooh, I have to keep track of where my mouse is here. Knight takes c6, and now d4 is the most popular response from here. And again, now on the black side, since this is my black repertoire, I don't have to pay attention to these other moves here. Instead, I'm going to go back to my reference here. After d4, it's suggesting bishop to b4 check in my book. So I am going to put that here as the move. And then I'm going to continue to follow what the highest move is on my chart here. Knight to c3 is the most popular move. So I'm going to play that, and then I'm going to look at my reference. I won't skip back there. But it does have bishop to g4 as the next move. So I play bishop to g4, and here it has d5 as the most popular response within my rating range. I'm going to go back to my reference. d5 is listed, and here there is just a brief end of the line here that my book gives. So I'm going to go ahead and play it. It's knight to e4. And here you can see there's only a couple games, but what I'm going to do is, since the line is only a couple extra moves, I am going to go ahead and show those moves. D takes c6. Looks like we have a sacrifice here. And again, normally I would take more time and try to understand the moves, but I am going to just put these in for you here. And then queen to e7 with this line. Okay, so we're going to stop there with this phase of the analysis, and then I'll show you what I do next. Okay, again, normally I would maybe do a couple lines. You don't want to do too many, but you just want to get a little skeleton of your initial repertoire. I just showed you how I did one line, but then maybe I would look at the next popular response on the second move, for example. But in this case, we're gonna go with that one line. I copied the PGN, and I'm gonna import it into my course in Chessable. This is going to allow you to review the lines, which I recommend you doing. And again, this is why I didn't want you to do too much, because the memorization itself isn't the most important thing, and we'll get to what to do next. But here, I'm gonna paste the PGN in. I'm gonna select my course, which is Brian's 1 e4 e5 repertoire, aptly named. And then I already created a chapter for the King's Gambit. I want to double check here. Now, normally, depending on what type of thing you're uploading, if you create a PGN with several lines using the process I showed you in the first part of the video, you're going to want to click this import all sub variations as their own item, and then they're all going to be created, and you'll have 3 or 4 lines, however many you created. But we only have one line, so I'm going to go ahead and import it. And I'm going to go see it. Now, what you want to do is check it. And so here we are. I'm going to edit variation so I can rename it. And I'm going to call this King's Gambit main line. Now, I might rename this later, but the point is just to put some name that's relevant to you. Again, normally I would, you can edit within the program here, and normally for each move I would put down several different comments along the way and different notes about each move. But again, we're just kind of giving you an overview of how to do this here. Now, once you've done that, you're going to, let's see here, we'll just update this. This is fine. And what you're going to do is you're going to go back to your course. Hold on. We're going back to our course here. And then we're going to memorize it. Okay? and you click see in chapter, and now you can see there's 10 moves to learn. I'm not going to do it here with you right now, but I would go ahead and memorize those moves that you just put in, and then go through the review process, check it every, check your Chessable every day and see if you're due for a review. Now, I've seen some people, again, you can do what you want. I've seen some people, they review this over and over and over again, but I think that you don't need to necessarily do it. I would follow the standard schedule, or you can update it if you find a preference, if you've been using Chessable for a while, and I would review it then. Really, you just want to memorize the basics of these lines just enough so you know them, but you don't need to, because the important part, again, the most important part isn't the memorization. So that's why I'm going to show you what I do next with this initial phase of learning and opening. Okay, now, once you've created the skeleton using your resources, whether a Chessable course or a book or a video, and then you've put it into Chessable so that you can memorize your lines. And again, I don't want to overstate. You don't want to do too much in terms of memorizing deep lines at this stage of the game. The next phase is you want to take a look at a few master games in the line. So here I have Chess Tempo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, right here you see this little notepad. You can paste the PGN. So I just pasted the same line I pasted into Chessable here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the end of the line. And I'm going to scroll down and see which games have been played. So this is actually an analysis line. So this has never been played in a master game. So all we're going to do is we're going to actually step back and look to see. We're going to go back. Basically, we're going to go back far enough that we can find some master games. Okay? And if you don't find any master games, that might be another question about whether you should find that. So actually, we're going to go way back now, and we're going to go forward a little bit this way. Let me flip the board. And here you can see over on the right, you can see all of the games. And these are from master games in the database 2200 plus versus 2200 plus. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go forward. You can see the games winnowing down. And then here there's only one game where he takes. So the main line is that D4. So you're going to want to study that eventually. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at this line here. And this was actually won by white. So I'm going to click on it. And then you're going to see the game here. And what all I'm going to do, and I'll show you here, is I'm just going to play through it. I'm going to flip the board to look at it from black side. I'm just going to play through it. And we're going to just get an idea of what happens in this opening. Okay, and we're seeing how the pieces are placed here. The person playing black is 2471, so of course a strong player. Of course his opponent, of course, was a grandmaster. And the idea is you can do as deep analysis as you want, but in this case, the reason I'm doing it like this is that I'm just getting an impression, watching what's happening here. And you can, as you watch the game, I might go a little slower than this, but I'm just trying to show you. I'm just having it autoplay. Let me stop right now just to get back to this. And you're going to get an impression of how this is played. So because that was only one game, I'm actually going to go back a little bit further to here, C6. Okay, I'm going to click on that, and now I can see there's quite a few more games here. I'm actually going to filter by the strongest black player here. And you can see here there's some early games. So I might want to get more recent games, but let's see here there's a win by Paul Karras. So let's go ahead and click on that. Let's see here. Let's click on that, and from this position, again, what I'm going to do is play through it. And here, you're just kind of seeing how these strong players handle these types of positions that you are learning. Again, you don't always have to do it this quickly, but the idea is to get just a general idea, just an impression of where the pieces are going, what types of attacks, are they attacking on the king side? Are they attacking on the queen side? Are they using pawn storms? Where are they placing their pieces? What pieces are being exchanged? So to get this impression, you do have to go through a few games. And maybe what I'll do is go through 5 to 10 master games at this first stage, or at this first stage of learning the opening. Um, so after this, so you've created the skeleton using your resources, and I like to use the Lichess Opening Explorer, but of course you can use chess.com's Opening Explorer. You can use ChessBase, whatever you want to use. I like using Lichess because you can filter by Lichess rating, so you can find people who are in the same rating range as you. After that, you're going to memorize the skeleton. And the order of these second two doesn't matter as much, I don't think. And then third, you're going to view a bunch of master games in that line in order to get an impression about how the opening goes. Now, the reason why you don't need to necessarily do you don't need to spend an hour on every single game at this point. If you want to, of course, go ahead, because the biggest learning for your opening is going to be in the next phase, which is you're going to start playing this in your games, in your online games, and I would even say you could play them in your tournament games if you don't have any other options, because when you make a wrong move in a tournament game or online, it's a little more painful, and you analyze the game. You say, oh, in the book I should have played this. This prevents this mistake. Because oftentimes those mistakes in the opening you make are, if you're playing strong enough opposition, are going to be punished, and the opening theory is going to show you how you avoid that type of mistake. And that's why I suggest you don't do too much early on in terms of memorizing. Like, I guess what I'm suggesting you not do is you don't go through the chapter and read straight through the chapter and try to memorize everything right away. Or in Chessable, you don't just go through and memorize every single line, because without the context of your own experience, that learning is going to be very shallow. It's not going to be deep. But if you memorize just a couple lines that you're most likely to see, first of all, you have a more likely chance of seeing one of those 2 lines on the board as opposed to seeing one of the 40 lines you memorized on the board. You're more likely to see maybe one of those 2 lines, and then you will see from experience where you made mistakes or where your opponents made mistakes, and then you'll understand the opening better. Now, after that, after every single game you play in that line, you're going to go back to your reference. You're going to go back to your Chessable course or your book or your video, and you're going to try to find how you can improve. And now you use that same process with Lichess, and then you create another branch in your opening repertoire. And then you just keep doing that for as long as you want to keep learning that opening. And I think that this will help you create a very deep understanding of your opening, but also by using this process very quickly, you'll be able to play your opening faster, because you will eliminate that feeling that you need to know it all before you start playing it. Because you have to understand that no one knows it all before they start playing it, because you won't have that experience of making those mistakes, of punishing those strategic errors, or getting punished for making errors in the opening or in the middle game that you will get as you play the opening. So start quickly, use this process to get you started quickly on the opening, and then after that, it's a recursive process of learning as you play it. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you may be already doing something similar in learning your openings, if so, let me know what you're doing down below. I'd love to get some ideas from you. Over here, I have a little playlist on some training tips that I've created over the years. And right down there, if you haven't already, there is a subscribe button so you can subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.